The double doors opened with a soft click. Polished shoes stepped cautiously across the marble floor, their echo sharp against the silence of the boardroom. Richard Royce walked in, gripping a leather portfolio with both hands. His usual confidence seemed thinner now, worn down by recent failures. He was dressed for power, tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, but the tension in his jaw betrayed something else: desperation. He glanced toward the row of executives seated along one side of the long table. Then his eyes stopped, dead center, on the woman at the head of the table, Selena. She didn't stand. She didn't smile. She didn't rush to greet him like she used to as a girl trying to impress her father. She simply looked at him, calm, collected, completely in command. Her suit was sharp, her posture was effortless, and her nameplate, Selena Royce, founder and CEO, gleamed in silver on the desk before her. Richard froze. For a second, he looked like he might laugh, as if maybe this was a misunderstanding. He blinked once, twice, then checked the folder in his hand, where ARC Dynamics was printed on the front in bold green letters. The company he was hoping would help save Royce Freight Logistics, the company his daughter built. Selena finally broke the silence. Her voice was low and measured. "Dad," she said, "you're late." He opened his mouth, closed it again. Everyone in the room waited. No one moved. The air was thick with something unspoken, a silent storm rolling in. "I didn't know," he began. Selena raised a hand just slightly. "We were considering a partnership," she said, "but this morning's numbers changed everything." She pushed a file across the table without emotion. "We reviewed your proposal. Your debt-to-revenue ratio has tripled since Q3. You ignored our flagged concerns. And as of 9 a.m., your main warehouse in Tulsa defaulted on its lease." Richard's hands twitched as he reached for the folder. His jaw clenched harder. "I came here in good faith. We're family." Selena stared at him, unflinching. "Were we family when you gave everything to Derek and told me I didn't belong at the table?" The room went quiet again. One of the men from Selena's team shifted in his seat, clearly aware of the personal gravity in the air but not daring to interrupt. Richard tried again. "Selena, this isn't about the past. We're in trouble. This merger could stabilize both of us." Selena's eyes didn't leave his. "You're right," she said. "It could have." Then she stood up, slowly and deliberately, collecting the folders in front of her and tapping them into alignment. But the offer just expired. Her voice didn't rise. She didn't need it to. Richard looked stunned, as if he'd just been doused with cold water. He glanced toward the door, then back at her as though trying to find the daughter he remembered. The one who used to hang around his office with a notebook full of ideas, eager to earn a place in his world. But that girl didn't exist anymore. She had built her own world. Selena gave a small nod to her assistant, who walked over and opened the doors behind Richard. He stood frozen for another moment. Then, with visible effort, he straightened his back, picked up his unused portfolio, and walked out, past a room full of people who now answered to the daughter he once dismissed. Selena sat back down. Her team quietly resumed the meeting. But inside, something had shifted. Not just in that room, but in her. She didn't need applause. She didn't need him to say she was right. She had said it herself, by building a company he now needed more than she ever needed him. And this time, she was the one who said no. Selena was 10 years old the first time she followed her dad to work. While most kids were off riding bikes or glued to cartoons, she spent that summer walking the floor of Royce Freight's headquarters in worn-out sneakers and oversized polo shirts with the company logo. She'd bring him coffee, half cream, no sugar, just the way he liked it, and sit on a filing cabinet as he took meetings, her legs swinging under her. Back then, she saw her dad as a giant. Richard Royce was confident, respected, and always moving. The way people deferred to him, the way he spoke like every word mattered, it lit something inside her. She didn't just want to be near the business, she wanted to be part of it. He used to pat her head and say, "One day, sweetheart. For now, stay out of the way." And she did, but she never stopped watching. By high school, she was helping in the office during breaks, sorting shipments, entering inventory data, quietly learning how operations ran from the bottom up. When her friends were out at parties, Selena was building a spreadsheet to show her dad how they could save 12% annually by switching to a new fuel partner. She gave it to him printed and stapled. He barely looked at it. "Derek's working on the real strategies," he said. "This is cute, though." Derek, 2 years older, louder, always surrounded by yes men, barely showed up in summers, but he had a way of charming their father with big talk and confident handshakes. Where Selena offered solutions, Derek made promises. And somehow, Richard always leaned toward the promises. Still, Selena didn't stop. She chose supply chain management in college, not because it sounded exciting, but because it was the foundation of everything their business touched: logistics, efficiency, optimization. She wanted to understand every lever behind the curtain. She worked 2 part-time jobs and still graduated magna cum laude. When she walked across the stage, she searched the crowd for her family. Marilyn, her mother, waved proudly. Derek had skipped it. Richard was on a business trip. She tried not to let it sting. After graduation, she returned home and asked to be part of the company officially. Not as the boss's daughter, but as an employee. She prepared a proposal detailing where she could make the most impact. It was professional, organized, and thorough. Richard read the first page and stopped. "Look, I'm glad you're passionate," he said. "But I can't just hand you a division. Derek's been preparing for years. He's got the business gene. You're more creative. Maybe marketing?" Marketing. It was the brush-off of all brush-offs. A quiet dismissal disguised as a compliment. The same kind her father had been giving her for years without realizing how loud it felt in her chest. Still, she tried. She started attending internal meetings, offering ideas, catching errors others missed. Her suggestions saved money. She found a way to cut dead mileage by automating route planning. Derek took the credit, and her father didn't correct him. One afternoon, she overheard Derek in the break room telling a junior manager, "Selena's good with ideas, but she's not built for this. Dad knows that." She didn't confront him. She didn't cry. She just filed it away like another invoice in a system that didn't see her value. The final blow came on a rainy Thursday, 2 months after her mother fell ill, and she'd taken over several of her father's duties temporarily. She thought he might finally see what she could do. Instead, he gathered the senior team to announce the future of the company. "I'm proud to say," Richard began, "that Royce Freight will be in good hands. Derek will take over as CEO next quarter." Selena stood at the back of the room, invisible. No mention, not even a nod. That night, she drove home in silence. Her mother asked how the day went. Selena smiled faintly and said, "Exactly how I expected." But inside, something cracked open. For years, she had tried to earn a seat at a table that was never meant for her, so she decided to build her own. Selena stopped trying to be seen after that announcement. At work, she became a ghost, present, productive, but silent. Her name never showed up in newsletters, never echoed in boardrooms, yet her fingerprints were on every major cost-saving improvement from Q2. When a key vendor threatened to pull out, it was Selena who renegotiated the deal, staying up all night with spreadsheets and invoices. Derek got the handshake. Her father never even asked how it was done. At home, things were quieter, too. Her mother, Marilyn, sensed the shift. Selena no longer stayed late at the office. She no longer talked about work at dinner. When asked, she'd shrug and change the subject. Her mother tried once, just once, to bring it up. "You've always worked so hard," Marilyn said gently. "Your father notices, even if he doesn't say it." Selena looked up from her tea. Her voice was calm. "No, Mom, he notices Derek." The truth was sharper than she intended, but it had hardened inside her long before she let it out. Her father didn't see her. He saw what he wanted, a daughter who stayed in the background, supported from the sidelines, never challenged the system he built. And Derek? He was the center of that system. He had never interned, never handled crises, never even managed a department without help. But he had what Richard believed mattered: presence, charisma, the Royce name. Derek could walk into a room and command it, not because he understood it, but because he believed he was entitled to it. He talked about legacy and vision and the future of freight. He wore tailored suits, posted about entrepreneurship on LinkedIn, and used phrases like scaling verticals even when they didn't apply. Clients laughed, nodded. Selena watched from the corner, biting her tongue. It wasn't just her father and Derek. Even the team she once considered friends began to follow the script. Invitations to meetings stopped coming. Memos skipped her desk. The few who tried to include her were quietly warned not to stir things up. One afternoon, a junior analyst named Rima whispered in the elevator, "You should be running this place." Then, just as quickly, she looked around nervously and added, "But maybe don't tell anyone I said that." Selena smiled, but inside, the weight pressed deeper. In the break room, when Derek walked in, people stood a little straighter. When she walked in, they barely glanced up. It wasn't hate. It was worse. It was indifference. She'd become invisible. And that invisibility was by design. Her father had crafted a world where Selena's success was always conditional, where every win could be repackaged as someone else's, every strength downplayed, every challenge softened into something cute or helpful. But Selena wasn't a background player. She was a builder. She saw the patterns no one else saw. She understood how systems failed and how to make them leaner, faster, smarter. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She was watching, listening, learning. If she'd been louder, maybe they would have tried to stop her. If she had demanded more, maybe they would have labeled her difficult. But Selena didn't raise her voice. She simply took notes. And underneath the silence, something powerful was taking shape. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But it was real. She was the underdog, unseen, underestimated, and uninvited. And that's what made her dangerous. Because she wasn't trying to win their game anymore. She was quietly building her own. It came one quiet afternoon in October, a flicker of possibility, so small and sudden it caught Selena off guard. She was walking past her father's office when his assistant, Lila, called out, "Selena? Mr. Royce wants to see you." Selena paused mid-step. Her mind rushed through possibilities. Had something gone wrong? Was there a project in crisis? Or was this finally the moment? She stepped inside, her heart steady but cautious. Richard sat behind his massive mahogany desk, flipping through a stack of quarterly reports. He didn't look up right away. "Close the door," he said. Selena obeyed, her mind racing. He still hadn't spoken to her one-on-one since Derek's appointment as CEO in waiting, not without someone else in the room. She folded her hands behind her back, waiting. He finally looked up. "I've been watching your performance this quarter," he said. "Strong numbers. That new distribution protocol, was that your doing?" She nodded, careful not to show too much emotion. "Yes, I implemented a dynamic inventory mapping system across the Northeast roads." Richard gave a short, impressed nod. "Smart. I'll admit it made a difference." For a second, Selena felt her posture ease just slightly. He was acknowledging her, not just tolerating her ideas, acknowledging them. It was the first time in months he'd given her credit, even in private. "We've got a vendor summit in Atlanta next month," he continued. "Derek and I are speaking on the main stage, but I was thinking, maybe you could run one of the breakout sessions." Selena blinked. "You mean represent Royce Freight at the summit?" He nodded. "Keep it simple. Maybe something about women in logistics, personal story stuff, human interest." There it was, the catch. Not strategy, not innovation, a personal piece. A panel filler, the safe option. Still, it was something. A door cracking open. She forced herself to smile. "I'd be happy to." "Good," he said, already glancing at his calendar. "It'll be good PR." As Selena left the room, something fluttered in her chest. It wasn't quite joy, but it was hope. A version of it. A naive part of her still wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of a shift. Maybe her father was beginning to see her. She went home that evening and opened her old presentation folders, refreshed her LinkedIn. She even told her mom over dinner. "He asked you to represent the company?" Marilyn's eyes lit up. "Selena, that's wonderful." Selena smiled softer than she had in weeks. "It's not much, but it's a start." She stayed up late planning ideas for the session. How to frame her experience, tie it into operational efficiency, maybe even introduce case studies from the field. It could be an opportunity to show more than just the daughter. She could show she was a builder. The next morning, she was at her desk by 7:30. She emailed Richard a preliminary session outline. Subject line: draft proposal, vendor summit. No reply. That afternoon, she printed hard copies and brought them to his office. Lila gave her a hesitant look. "He's in with Derek." "I'll wait," Selena said. Half an hour passed, then 40 minutes. Finally, the door opened and Derek stepped out, laughing. He held a glossy summit brochure in one hand and turned just as he saw Selena. "Oh," he said with a grin. "You heard?" She frowned. "Heard what?" "They bumped me up to lead both sessions. Dad said it'd make more sense to have one clear voice. You know, streamline." Selena stared at him. "He told me I'd be presenting." Derek shrugged. "Things change." He walked off. She stepped into her father's office without knocking. Richard looked up. "Selena, you asked me to present." He didn't blink. "And then I changed the plan. You'll still attend. It'll be good exposure." Her mouth was dry. "You gave it to him." "It's not about giving," he said. "It's about optics. Derek's the future of the company." Selena felt the words slam into her gut. Not because they were new, but because she dared to believe something different, even for one day. She turned and walked out, the proposal still clutched in her hand. That night, she shredded it. Hope, she realized, was dangerous, not because it failed, but because it made the betrayal hurt worse. This wasn't a turning point. It was a reminder. The door had never opened. She had just imagined it did. It happened without warning, without ceremony, without conversation, and certainly without consideration. Selena had just finished her fourth client debrief of the day. She was exhausted but proud. In the past month alone, she had single-handedly solved 3 supply chain snarls that saved the company close to $600,000. And yet, not a word from her father. No email, no mention in the executive brief. She told herself it didn't matter. She still believed that if she just kept delivering, eventually someone would have to notice. That illusion shattered on a rainy Friday morning. She was walking through the office lobby when she spotted a small crowd gathering around the front reception area. Several employees were clustered near the large digital screen that typically looped welcome messages and company news. Now it was flashing something new. "Congratulations, Derek Royce, incoming Chief Executive Officer, Royce Freight Logistics." Selena stopped in her tracks. The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. Time slowed. Beneath the headline was a photo of Derek standing next to their father, both grinning with their arms around each other. Derek held up a key, symbolic clearly. The caption read, "Celebrating the legacy of leadership, from Richard to Derek, ushering in a new era." Her stomach dropped. No one had told her. Not a whisper, not a memo, not a heads up. She backed away from the crowd, ignoring the wide-eyed glance from a junior manager who had clearly just noticed her presence. The sting wasn't just the announcement, it was the realization that it was all public, formalized, signed, branded. The transition she'd spent her entire life working toward, gone and not even worth a conversation. She stormed upstairs to her father's office. The door was half open. Derek sat on the edge of their father's desk, laughing, scrolling through congratulatory emails on his phone. Selena stood in the doorway, silent. Richard looked up. Ah, Selena. She waited. Waited for him to say something, acknowledge it, explain, even apologize. He didn't. "You found out," he said simply, as if she'd read a weather report. "You announced Derek as CEO," she replied, her voice thin. He nodded. It was time. No meeting? No discussion? There wasn't much to discuss. Selena's throat tightened. "I've been running operations for months. I've saved this company millions. I've put in more hours than—" "You've been helpful," Richard interrupted. "But CEO is a different beast." She blinked. "And Derek is ready for that?" "He's a natural leader." "No, he's naturally entitled." The words escaped before she could stop them. Derek turned, mock offended. "Whoa, that's cute coming from someone who couldn't lead a team of 5 without Carmen holding her hand." Selena clenched her fists. "You have no idea what I've built." Richard sighed. "This isn't about feelings, Selena. This is about structure, legacy. Derek's been groomed for this since he was a kid. That was always the plan." Always the plan. The phrase rang in her ears like a gunshot. She'd been fooling herself this entire time. Her work, her sacrifices, her loyalty. It was never part of the equation. She wasn't being evaluated. She was being tolerated. "I worked for a seat at the table," she whispered. Richard stood now, voice firm. "And you'll always have a place in this company, but not at the head of it." Her vision blurred. She didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. She turned on her heel and walked out. Down the hallway, down the stairs, out the glass doors, into the rain. She didn't grab her coat. She didn't check her phone. She didn't stop until she reached her car. She sat in the driver's seat, water dripping from her hair, and stared at the windshield, numb. That was the moment something broke inside her. Not like glass shattering, but like chains snapping. The ones she hadn't realized were wrapped around her, forged from years of trying to prove her worth in a world that had already decided she didn't have any. There would be no more pitches, no more strategies, no more quiet loyalty. She had been dismissed, so now she would disappear. Not to hide, to build. And one day she'd be the name on someone else's screen. Not for legacy, for dominance. Selena didn't show up to work the next Monday, or Tuesday. By Wednesday, someone from HR called to check in. She didn't answer. She wasn't sick. She wasn't on vacation. She was grieving, though not the kind you send flowers for. This was quieter, crueler. The kind of grief that creeps into your bones when you realize everything you thought you were working toward was never yours to begin with. She stayed inside for days, barely eating. Her inbox filled with messages she refused to read. Derek's smiling face showed up in company newsletters, in posts on LinkedIn, where people congratulated him with emojis and words like visionary and trailblazer. Words she had earned but never received. Her apartment, once a place of retreat, now felt like a prison, the walls pressed in. Her framed degrees mocked her. The whiteboard full of strategies and long-term plans she'd been sketching out for the company. It all seemed laughable now, like a child's dream written in erasable marker. She'd built her life around loyalty, to the company, to her family, to her father, and they had shown her with absolute clarity that none of it mattered. That week, her mother came by twice, unannounced. The first time, Selena didn't answer the door. She just watched through the peephole as Marilyn stood with a grocery bag and a look of soft worry. Eventually, her mother left it on the floor and walked away without a word. The second time, Selena let her in. They didn't talk much. Marilyn made tea in silence while Selena sat at the counter, arms crossed. Her mother didn't ask what happened. She already knew. They'd both lived in the same house long enough to understand what was never said. Marilyn placed the mug in front of her and quietly said, "I know this hurts." Selena didn't respond. "I used to think your father would see how capable you are," her mother added. "That one day he'd wake up and realize he underestimated you." Selena looked up. But he never did. Marilyn's smile was sad. No, and I don't think he ever will. That truth landed like a stone in Selena's chest, not because it was new, but because hearing it out loud made it final, absolute, undeniable. After her mother left, Selena sat alone with her thoughts, staring at the cooling tea, untouched. She began replaying moments she'd brushed off before, the eye rolls, the backhanded compliments, the sudden silence when she entered the room. All the times she bit her tongue to protect someone else's ego, all the times she made herself smaller to make them feel bigger. And for what? So she could be rewarded with silence? Dismissal? A seat at the kids' table while her brother inherited everything? The sadness eventually turned into something else, something sharper, a new voice inside her. Not soft, not forgiving, not anymore. It said, "You were never meant to be chosen, because they didn't see you, and they never would. So stop waiting." She grabbed a notebook and wrote one word at the top of the page in bold black ink. Start. No plan, no structure, just the first command to herself. That night, she deleted every file she had created for Royce Freight. All her notes, all her future projections. Gone. If they didn't value her work, they didn't deserve to benefit from it. She shut down her company laptop and slid it into a drawer. She'd never touch it again. She unplugged from everything. No LinkedIn, no email, no family dinners. For the first time in years, Selena wasn't tethered to someone else's expectations. And while the silence was brutal, it was also clean, honest. Isolation wasn't the punishment. It was the start of clarity. She didn't know what came next. She had no investors, no team, no blueprint, but she had something better: freedom. And the first taste of it, bitter as it was, reminded her of something she'd forgotten along the way. She wasn't weak. She was waiting. And now they had no idea what she was about to become. A week after cutting herself off from the outside world, Selena sat at the kitchen table flipping through the business section of an old newspaper. Not because she wanted to read it. She just needed her hands to be busy. She'd stopped scrolling social media days ago. Watching Derek pose in photo shoots and share CEO wisdom was more than she could stomach. Her phone had been on silent. The emails, the calls, ignored. But when it buzzed that afternoon, vibrating across the counter insistently, something made her check it. The caller ID read, Carmen Lee. Selena stared at the name, surprised. She hadn't spoken to Carmen in almost 2 years. Once a senior VP at Royce Freight, Carmen had been quietly pushed out when Derek started climbing. Selena had admired her, respected her brilliance, her integrity, but they'd never been especially close. Carmen had simply vanished after the restructuring. Selena let it ring. It stopped, then started again. She hesitated and answered. "Selena." Carmen's voice was warm but firm. "Please don't hang up." Selena exhaled. "I wasn't going to." There was a pause. Then Carmen said, "I heard what happened." Of course she had. Selena didn't respond. She didn't need to. "I want to meet," Carmen said. "Just coffee. No pressure." Selena's instinct was to decline, polite, distant, safe. But then something softened. Maybe it was the way Carmen's voice held no judgment, no pity, just respect. A rare thing these days. "Okay," she said quietly. "Tomorrow?" They met at a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat, quiet, off the grid. Carmen was already seated when Selena arrived. She stood and opened her arms. Selena hesitated, then stepped into the hug. It felt grounding. They sat down. Carmen ordered green tea. Selena stuck to black coffee, no sugar. For a while, they didn't talk about the company. Carmen asked how she was sleeping, if she was eating, how she was holding up. Selena gave short, honest answers. Then Carmen leaned in and said, I always knew they wouldn't let you lead." Selena looked up, surprised. Carmen wasn't trying to be cruel. Her eyes were steady, kind. "Not because you weren't capable," she said, "because you were too capable, and they were afraid of that." Selena's throat tightened. "I tried to stay," Carmen added. "But when Derek got his claws in, there was no room for anyone who didn't flatter him. You asked real questions. You made real decisions. That was threatening." Selena swallowed hard. "So they erased me." "They underestimated you," Carmen corrected. "And that's their blind spot. Always has been." Selena looked down at her coffee. "What do I do now?" Carmen smiled, the corners of her eyes creasing. "You build." Selena shook her head. "I don't have funding. I don't have infrastructure. I don't even know where to start." "You have more than you think," Carmen said. "You have knowledge. You have vision. You know this industry better than anyone under 30 I've ever met. You've already done the hard part. You stayed silent and watched how everything works." Selena didn't speak. She was afraid to believe in herself again. Hope had betrayed her before. But Carmen wasn't finished. "I've been consulting," she said. "Startups, tech integration, boutique logistics. And I've been looking for someone to partner with. Someone smart, someone the industry doesn't see coming." Selena blinked. "You're offering me a job?" Carmen shook her head. "I'm offering you equity, a real partnership. You bring the engine, I'll bring the spark." Selena's chest rose with a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "No pressure," Carmen added, "but if you're ready to stop proving yourself to people who will never see you, then it's time to be seen by the ones who do." For the first time in weeks, Selena felt the ache in her chest loosen. Not vanish, but shift. She didn't answer right away. She didn't need to, because in that moment, something clicked back into place. She wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, the real story was just beginning. Selena didn't tell anyone. Not her parents, not her old colleagues, not even the few friends who still checked in occasionally. As far as the outside world was concerned, she had vanished. But behind closed doors, something entirely different was happening. She and Carmen began meeting every other day in a converted workspace inside an old warehouse. The place smelled faintly of concrete and ambition. A single wooden table stood in the center, covered with laptops, whiteboards, paper scraps, and coffee cups. No suits, no assistants. Just two women planning something no one could see coming. They called it ARC Dynamics, short for Agile Routing and Coordination. It would be leaner, smarter, and more adaptive than the outdated logistics dinosaurs still operating with 20-year-old software and bloated middle management. No red tape, no ego, just results. Selena brought the engine. She mapped the entire back-end infrastructure, sketched tech stacks, broke down customer pain points by industry. She had spent years absorbing it all. Every misstep, every failure, every friction point she'd seen at Royce Freight. She knew exactly where the industry was slow and exactly how to make it move faster. Carmen, true to her word, brought the spark. She secured the first angel investor, an old client who had been burned by Royce's arrogance, and remembered how Carmen once salvaged his shipments during a port strike. Then came another and another. It was quiet money. No press releases. No announcements. Selena insisted on it. They didn't even create a full website. "Let them think we're nothing," she said. "It'll make the reveal that much sweeter." Selena worked like someone possessed, not from anger but from clarity. Every late night she'd once spent saving her father's company, she now poured into her own. She coded process automation scripts until sunrise. She wrote training modules and courier protocols from scratch. She tested route optimization algorithms herself, sometimes driving sample delivery runs just to confirm her models in real time. They hired 3 interns, young, hungry, overlooked by the big firms. Selena trained them personally. She didn't believe in hierarchies. She believed in building people the way she had wished someone would build her. And slowly, things began to move. Their first client was a small vegan skincare brand, struggling with delayed shipments and lost inventory. Within 6 weeks, RC Dynamics had cut their delivery costs by 28%. increased delivery speed by 34%, and rebuilt customer trust. The founder cried during the follow-up call. Word spread. 2 more startups signed on. Then a fitness apparel company. Then a pet food subscription brand. All small players, but with big growth potential. Carmen and Selena didn't chase the giants. They focused on brands that had been ignored or undercut by the majors. Selena kept her name off everything. The contracts listed RC Dynamics. Not her, not yet. But internally, she was everywhere. Team calls, code reviews, customer meetings. She knew every name, every data point, every shipment. And with every win, her confidence grew. Not the kind built from praise or validation, the kind built from execution. From watching something work that you built with your bare hands, in the dark, with no one watching. She didn't think much about her father during those months, or Derek. They were background noise now. Old pages in a book she no longer had to read. But sometimes, late at night, she'd stare at the folder on her desktop labeled RF Legacy Weak Points, notes she'd compiled during her years inside Royce Freight. She never opened it. Not yet. But she knew it was there, and she knew that one day it would come in handy. Carmen noticed the change in her. "You've stopped apologizing," she said one night, watching Selena close out a client dashboard. "I used to think I had to be smaller to be respected," Selena replied. "Now I know I just needed to be in the right room." They sat in silence for a moment. The hum of the warehouse echoed around them. Selena didn't feel like the girl who had been passed over anymore. She felt like someone they'd regret underestimating. The beauty of growing in silence was that no one saw the roots taking hold. But when the bloom came, it would be undeniable. While Selena was quietly constructing her empire, the Royce family was busy posting theirs on social media. Derek had transformed the Royce Freight office into a playground of ego. The lobby was redesigned with sleek black marble floors, abstract art installations, and a massive wall-sized photo of him shaking hands with their father, captioned, "Legacy in Motion." He gave himself a new title, Chief Vision Officer. Even though his responsibilities hadn't changed, he began attending industry panels and speaking about reinventing logistics for Gen Z markets. Selena watched a clip once out of curiosity. He rambled about drones and blockchain without understanding either. She clicked it off after 90 seconds. Their father, Richard, remained convinced that Derek was leading the company into a bold future. He liked what he saw: headlines, praise, LinkedIn likes. The surface shimmered, and he never looked deeper. Selena's name never came up. Not at the dinner table, not in board meetings, not even in passing. To them, she had simply faded into the background. "Selena's off doing her own thing," Richard once told a colleague at a golf outing. "Creative stuff, probably consulting." He said it with a dismissive chuckle, as if her absence were an amusing detour from reality. But the cracks were already forming beneath him. Behind closed doors, the company was bleeding clients. Derek's flashy initiatives, automated kiosks in warehouses, outsourced drivers through a third-party app, were riddled with bugs and inefficiencies. Packages were being lost. Routes were delayed. Contracts lapsed. He blamed his managers, fired 3 department heads in 1 quarter. Richard told him to tighten the ship. Derek responded by slashing customer service staff and hiring an ex-influencer to handle brand partnerships. Morale dropped. Talent fled. But Derek didn't notice. He was too busy being photographed next to luxury cars and posting thought leader quotes online. "Sometimes you have to bet on yourself," one caption read, as if he'd built Royce Freight from scratch. Richard saw what he wanted to see: a son who looked the part. He hosted an anniversary gala for the company's 35th year in business. Derek gave a speech. Richard clapped the loudest. Meanwhile, RC Dynamics signed 3 more brands. Selena's routes were moving 17% faster than the industry standard. Their software, lean, AI integrated, fully optimized, was outperforming competitors with teams 10 times the size. Still, no one in the Royce camp suspected a thing, and that was exactly how Selena wanted it. She'd hear snippets from her mother, who still called now and then. "Derek just signed a deal with some influencer shipping service," Marilyn said once. "Your father's very excited." Selena just smiled. "That's great, Mom." She never corrected her. Never mentioned that ARC had quietly taken 2 major vendors from Royce Freight just last month. Let them celebrate, because the more they inflated Derek's image, the more fragile it became. Selena wasn't after revenge. She was after readiness. And every arrogant press release, every badly managed rollout, every overconfident speech Derek gave was sharpening her edge. She heard from old colleagues, too, quiet whispers from people still inside Royce Freight. One sent her a private message. "Miss seeing you around. Honestly, things are chaos here. I'm starting to think you were the only one who actually knew what she was doing." Selena didn't respond. She didn't need to. The silence was part of the strategy. Because while Derek thought she'd disappeared, she was becoming the one person his empire could never survive meeting across the table. But they still didn't see it. Richard still believed his son would carry the family name higher. Derek still believed his charm would patch every broken system. They both stood in front of a dam with hairline fractures, admiring their reflections. And behind that wall, the flood was rising. Selena had no plans to stop it. She was just waiting for the right time to walk into the room and let the water in. It started with a whisper. A leaked industry report. A dip in Royce Freight's Q4 performance numbers that hadn't been predicted. A delay in shipment timelines that angered several major retailers. No one panicked, at first. But then came the letter from one of their largest corporate clients. A formal termination of their 5-year logistics contract. Richard stormed into Derek's office, red-faced and furious. "We just lost Vanguard Furniture." Derek shrugged like it was nothing. "We'll get someone else. It's not like they were our only account." Richard slammed the letter onto the desk. "They went to RC Dynamics." Derek blinked. "Who?" "That startup no one's heard of," Richard snapped. "They undercut us and offered same-week rollout. Vanguard didn't even ask us to counter." Derek leaned back in his chair, trying to look confident. "It's probably a temporary deal. They'll come back." But they didn't. Within the next month, RC Dynamics pulled 2 more mid-size contracts from Royce Freight. Quietly, cleanly. Every time, the client said the same thing. They're more efficient, more transparent, more responsive. Richard finally did some digging. No founders listed publicly, no photos, no bios, just results. That's when panic set in. They scheduled a high-stakes meeting with a panel of investors and clients at a closed-door industry summit. The goal? To save face, reinforce confidence in Royce Freight's strategic roadmap, and pitch a merger between traditional freight operations and emerging tech. Richard insisted Derek lead it. "This is your moment," he said. "You're the face of our future." Derek smirked. "Let's show them what legacy looks like." Behind the scenes, Carmen received a message from one of her contacts at the summit committee. ARC Dynamics had been invited to that same roundtable. Carmen forwarded the invite to Selena without a word. Selena opened the email and stared at the subject line. "Confidential, executive panel, market shifts in modern logistics." The final line sealed it. "Panelist opponent, Royce Freight Logistics." She looked up slowly. "They have no idea what's coming," she said. Carmen nodded. "They still think you're a side note." Selena didn't laugh. She didn't gloat. She simply turned her laptop, opened the file she had named over a year ago, RF Legacy Weak Points XLSX, and began fine-tuning her notes. In the weeks leading up to the summit, she worked with surgical focus. She didn't prepare to embarrass them. She prepared to show the room what real leadership looked like. She built a pitch that outlined her company's technology, scalability, and ethics. She didn't speak in slogans or fluff. She used proof, actual numbers, real wins, human impact. ARC Dynamics wasn't just leaner, it was smarter, and most importantly, it was ethical. Selena had no interest in crushing her father's company just for the sake of it, but she wasn't going to protect it anymore. Not when it stood on the same foundation that had once erased her. As the day of the summit approached, the tension in the Royce camp grew thicker. Staff were overworked, confused, anxious. Clients were asking too many questions. Internal emails leaked. Investors were growing skeptical of Derek's bravado and increasingly interested in RC's quiet precision. The night before the summit, Marilyn called Selena again. "Are you going?" she asked gently. Selena paused. "I am." There was a beat of silence. "I heard your father's nervous," her mother said. "I don't think he's ever admitted that before." Selena closed her eyes. "He doesn't know I'll be there, does he?" "No," Marilyn whispered. "But he'll find out soon." Selena thanked her and ended the call. The morning of the event, she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blazer. Her face was calm, her voice steady. But her hands trembled, not with fear, but with clarity. This was not revenge. This was reckoning. She arrived early, her badge already printed. As she walked past the reception area, her heels clicked against the marble, each step deliberate. Inside the main hall, a row of name tags sat neatly on a table. She picked up hers, Selena Royce, co-founder and CEO, ARC Dynamics. No hiding anymore. This was her name, her company, her moment. And just outside that door, her father and brother were preparing to pitch to a room full of people who were about to realize the person they had ignored was now the person they needed most. But by then, it would be too late. The summit room buzzed with quiet energy, polished executives chatting over lattes, clients flipping through agendas, assistants adjusting name tags at each chair. Everyone in attendance knew that this panel would be different. 3 of the top freight companies were presenting, but all eyes were on 2 names, Royce Freight Logistics and the mysterious rising star, ARC Dynamics. Richard and Derek stood near the front of the room, reviewing their slides on a private monitor. Derek was dressed in his usual tailored perfection, navy blazer, pocket square, too much cologne. Richard looked sharp but distracted, constantly glancing toward the entrance. "Relax," Derek said, smirking. "This is ours to win." Richard forced a nod. "Just stick to the messaging. Confidence, innovation, legacy." "Got it, Dad. I'm ready." They didn't know Selena was already inside. She had walked in unnoticed during the setup and taken her seat at the opposite end of the long panel table. Carmen sat beside her, cool and collected. Their slide deck was loaded and ready. Selena's nameplate sat gleaming on the polished wood in front of her. Selena Royce, CEO, ARC Dynamics. When the host introduced the panel, Richard's expression didn't change. But Derek, scanning the table with casual arrogance, suddenly stopped. His eyes locked on Selena. For a moment, he looked confused, like he was seeing a ghost in the wrong room. Then his mouth twisted into a tight smirk, as if to say, "You're kidding." Selena didn't blink, didn't flinch. She looked right at him and gave the smallest nod. The host's voice echoed through the mic. "Let's begin with introductions. Mr. Royce?" Richard stepped forward and took the microphone. "Good morning. I'm Richard Royce, founder of Royce Freight Logistics. For 35 years, our company has—" Selena didn't hear the rest. Her heart thudded once, then steadied. This wasn't about nerves. This was about presence. After Derek spoke, rattling off buzzwords, shallow metrics, and grand visions, Carmen leaned toward her. "Your turn." Selena rose and walked to the podium. For the first time in years, every eye in the room was on her. And for once, it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt earned. She clicked her remote, and the ARC Dynamics logo filled the screen behind her. No flashy animation, no dramatic music, just clean white letters and undeniable results. "My name is Selena Royce," she began, her voice calm and even. "I'm the CEO and co-founder of RC Dynamics, a lean logistics firm built on real-time route optimization, AI-based freight management, and client-first innovation." A few murmurs. That name, Royce. Richard's face went pale. Selena continued. In the last 9 months, our company has reduced delivery times by 24%, increased fulfillment accuracy by 37%, and saved our clients over $8.2 million without legacy systems, without corporate bloat, and without inherited power. Her words hung in the air. She didn't glance at her father. She didn't need to. She shifted slides and showed live client dashboards, testimonials, hard numbers. She didn't embellish. She didn't boast. She just presented the facts. When she finished, there was a beat of silence, then applause. Not polite, not hesitant, sustained. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Richard kept his eyes fixed on the center of the table, his jaw locked in place. After the panel, investors swarmed Selena. A senior executive from one of Royce Freight's oldest partners approached her, shaking her hand and saying, "We've been looking for someone who understands where this industry is going. Turns out we were looking in the wrong place all along." Selena thanked him. She didn't brag, she didn't gloat. She just moved through the room, poised and powerful. By the time Richard and Derek finally reached her, the conversation around her had already shifted. She wasn't just a panelist. She was the future. Richard stopped just short of her circle. His voice was low. "Selena, we need to talk." She turned toward him slowly, calm, certain. "You had your chance," she said. He hesitated. "We didn't know it was you." "That was the point," she replied. "You never asked. You never looked. You never believed I could be more than background." Derek stepped forward, trying to save face. "This doesn't change anything. You can't replace us." Selena tilted her head. "I'm not trying to replace you," she said. I've already outgrown you." Then she smiled, not with cruelty, but with clarity. She picked up her folder, turned to Carmen and said, "Let's go." As they walked away, Richard stood frozen, surrounded by silence. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the most important man in the room. His daughter was. The moment Selena walked out of that summit room, the energy around Richard and Derek Royce shifted. It was as if the ground beneath them had quietly cracked, and everyone else had already stepped back to watch them fall. Richard stood rigid, staring at the space where his daughter had just been. His mouth was slightly open, as though he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Around him, conversations resumed, but now the questions in the air were different. "Did you know Selena Royce runs ARC?" "She's incredible." Her numbers destroyed Derek's presentation. "Why didn't Royce Freight back her?" Even Richard's longtime allies began to drift away, some with polite nods, others with strained smiles that said, "You've lost your edge." Derek clenched his fists in his pockets, jaw tight with embarrassment. "They were just impressed with the pitch," he muttered. "We still have more experience, more scale." Richard didn't respond. He was staring at a tablet someone had left open on the table. On the screen was Arc Dynamics' client dashboard. It displayed live metrics, shipments in transit, delivery rates, cost savings. Everything was clean, precise, fast, better than anything Royce Freight had delivered in years. And Selena had built it. His daughter, the one he dismissed to HR roles and PR panels, had outpaced them with a team of 10 and no legacy support, all because she'd quietly been watching, learning, planning. "Dad?" Derek said. Richard finally turned, eyes heavy. "Why didn't we know?" Derek scoffed. "Because she ghosted. She quit. She disappeared." "No," Richard said slowly. "She moved in silence." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explode. He just lowered into his chair, his energy hollowed out. That evening, the headlines spread. "Breakout star at Logistics Summit. Selena Royce of Arc Dynamics turns industry heads." Royce Freight faces investor skepticism after Arc's stunning presentation. The calls started coming in the next morning. 2 longtime clients requested early renegotiations. One threatened to walk. Another already had, quietly shifting their business to RK without informing Derek at all. In a panicked meeting with senior staff, Richard tried to project control. "This is a bump," he said. We respond with innovation. We reassert our value. But no one looked reassured, because the truth was too obvious now. ARC wasn't just competition. It was the future, and it had already pulled ahead. Derek was no longer confident. In private, he argued with staff, blaming everyone but himself. "This is a PR problem, not a service problem," he snapped. "We just need better messaging." But no messaging could rewrite the fact that his company had become sluggish and bloated, while Selena's had become agile and admired. Even internally, morale crumbled. Employees whispered in elevators. Department heads scheduled secret interviews with recruiters. A mid-level operations manager submitted her resignation with a single line: "I want to work where innovation is valued, where people like Selena Royce lead." Richard received the letter directly. He read it twice. He didn't rip it up. He folded it and placed it in his drawer. That night, he sat alone in his home office, the walls lined with plaques and awards bearing his name. He looked at a framed photo on his desk, him and Derek, standing in front of the Royce Freight warehouse, smiling like kings. There was no photo of Selena, not on the desk, not on the walls. He hadn't realized how absent she'd become, not just from the office, but from his life, from the story he had written in his head, the one where Derek was the hero and Selena was the sidekick if she appeared at all. Now, the narrative had flipped. Selena wasn't the lost daughter anymore. She was the one holding the industry in her hands. And for the first time in his life, Richard felt something unfamiliar: regret. Not because he had lost clients, not because he had lost market power, but because he had never even seen his daughter for who she was. And now, she was the one who got to decide whether he'd be part of her story again, or left behind like a failed chapter. Selena stood by the wide windows of Arc Dynamics' downtown office, 10 floors up, overlooking a city that once felt too big for her. The hum of quiet conversations and gentle keyboard clicks filled the air behind her. Her team was working. Her company was thriving. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving to prove something. She was simply leading. She sipped her coffee slowly, letting the moment settle around her. She no longer felt the tightness in her chest that used to come with her father's name. No more late-night questions about whether she had done enough, whether she had earned it, whether she would ever be enough. She had moved beyond the need for recognition. Her wins weren't about revenge anymore. They were about arrival. It was Carmen who said it best during a recent client meeting. After a successful pitch, the client, a big-name brand that had just walked away from Royce Freight, turned to Selena and asked, "So, what's your story? How'd you get here?" Carmen smiled before Selena could speak and said, "She built herself quietly while everyone else underestimated her. That's how." Selena hadn't replied. She didn't have to. The truth was louder than any story. She thought about all the years she had bent herself into shapes to fit into her father's vision. All the late nights, all the ideas stolen by others, the humiliation of being treated like a placeholder in her own legacy. And now, she had her own legacy, not inherited, not gifted, not signed over in some boardroom by a man who thought leadership was only for sons. Selena had created a space where competence came before charisma, where results mattered more than legacy, and where every woman in the room knew she had earned her place. Her team wasn't just efficient. They were loyal, empowered, sharp. They weren't trying to impress her. They were building alongside her. She had become the kind of leader she used to search for, the kind her younger self had needed. The irony was that once upon a time, she'd have done anything to hear her father say, "I'm proud of you." Now she didn't need it, because her pride came from somewhere deeper, something no one could take away or withhold. It came from every risk she had taken, every quiet night she had worked alone, every time she chose not to break, not to beg, not to shrink. It came from walking into that summit room with her name at the center of the table and knowing, not hoping, but knowing that she belonged there. Selena sat at her desk and opened a folder labeled Personal. Inside was a photo she'd printed from her college graduation. She was smiling, cap tilted sideways, surrounded by classmates. In the background, the seat reserved for Richard Roy's parent was empty. She used to cry when she saw it. Now she looked at it and smiled. It reminded her of how far she had come, of what she had carried alone, and of the strength she had built because of it. She didn't carry bitterness anymore. She carried clarity. That was her real victory. Because Derek could have the applause. Her father could keep the plaques on the wall. She had something they couldn't buy, brand, or bury: peace. And peace wasn't just the absence of pain. It was presence. Presence in her own life, her own decisions, her own worth. She clicked off the photo and opened a live dashboard. Another new client had just signed on. A brand she once pitched under Royce Freight, only to have Derek call it small time. Now they were scaling fast, and they trusted her. Selena leaned back in her chair, the afternoon light pouring through the windows, warm and clean. There were no fireworks, no revenge speeches, no dramatic exits. There was only this: success. Still, steady. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need to. It had been 3 weeks since the summit when the letter arrived. Not an email, not a typed memo. A real letter. Envelope, stamp, handwritten in her father's blocky, unmistakable print. Selena found it among the rest of the office mail, tucked between a courier invoice and a thank you note from a client. She almost tossed it into the recycling bin. But something about the return address, Richard Royce, Home Office, made her pause. She stood at her desk for a moment, just staring at it. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She wasn't afraid of what it said. She just didn't know if she cared. After a moment, she slid a letter opener under the seal and unfolded the thick paper. Selena, I'm not sure where to begin, so I'll say what I haven't said enough. I was wrong. I didn't see you, not the way I should have. I thought I was protecting the company by preserving tradition. I thought leadership had to look a certain way, sound a certain way. I thought being a father meant guiding you, not following you. I see now that I mistook control for care. Watching you speak at the summit was one of the most humbling moments of my life. Not because you embarrassed us, you didn't. You showed restraint, dignity, and vision. You didn't just surpass us. You became someone we couldn't even imagine. You have every reason to shut this door. I would understand. But if you'll allow it, I'd like to talk. Not as a founder, not as a man clinging to a fading business, but as your father, finally trying to listen. No expectations, no business. Just time. Richard. Selena read the letter twice, then once more. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't begging. It was quiet, thoughtful. A man, perhaps for the first time, laying down his armor. She folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside her desk. Not with anger, not with sentimentality, just stillness. That night, she didn't sleep. Not from conflict, from decision. She sat on her balcony overlooking the city that had once swallowed her whole, and now bent slightly around her. She thought of the girl she used to be, the one who stayed late to impress her father, the one who mistook silence for approval, crumbs for invitations. That girl might have run back the moment she saw those words. She would have jumped at the chance to make things whole again. She would have hoped, but that girl was gone. The woman sitting here tonight had rebuilt herself brick by brick, without applause, and she wasn't looking for validation. But she wasn't looking for vengeance either. The next morning, she sent a short email. "Hi, Mom. Tell Dad I got his letter. I appreciate it. I'll need some time." But I heard him. Selena. She hit send, that was all. No promise of a meeting, no hug around the neck. But not a slammed door either, just a sliver of something new. She wasn't trying to erase the past. She wasn't pretending the wounds didn't shape her. But she also knew something her father might only now be learning. Redemption isn't a performance. It's quiet, patient accountability. And she would allow it to begin if it was real. But it would be on her terms now. Days later, she found herself walking through a local business expo with Carmen. The Ark had a small booth, nothing fancy. Just clean design, smart demos, and real testimonials. People stopped. They asked questions. They listened. That's when Selena saw her mother standing in the crowd, alone, holding a coffee, watching her from a distance. Their eyes met. Her mother gave a small, tentative wave. Selena returned it with a smile. Not wide, not forced, but warm. It was enough. Because healing didn't have to come in grand declarations. Sometimes it came in glances, in gestures, in the way a father finally used the right words, or the way a mother stood in the back of the room and didn't ask for anything but to witness her daughter in her element. Selena turned back toward the booth as another visitor walked up to ask about ARC's fulfillment dashboard. She stepped forward to answer, fully present. The world didn't stop spinning, but it had shifted, and this time, it turned toward her. It was just past 6 p.m. when the last client left the ARC Dynamics office. The team had wrapped a huge account, a national eco-packaging brand that chose RC over 3 legacy freight companies. There had been applause, high fives, even a bottle of champagne opened in the break room. But now the office was quiet again, warm light spilling across the hardwood floors, the hum of the city rising in the distance. Selena stood alone in the main workspace, fingers trailing over a stack of proposals on her desk. She wasn't thinking about numbers. She was thinking about something else entirely, about the weight she no longer carried. There was no doubt anymore. Not in her mind, not in the market, not in the whispers of competitors who once dismissed her name. She had become the woman her past never prepared for, but her future always demanded. And the power she held now wasn't loud or boastful. It was calm, earned, absolute. She walked down the hallway, heels echoing softly against the tile, and paused in front of the frosted glass door to her private office. The silver letters still read, Selena Royce, founder and CEO. She looked at them for a moment, not to admire, just to remember, because she had once been a girl who stood in the shadow of that name, begging for it to carry her forward. Now, it was the world learning to carry her name. Inside her office, she sat and opened her notebook, her real notebook, the one with ideas scribbled in the margins, future markets circled in red, thoughts too risky to say out loud back when she was invisible. She smiled, flipping to a clean page. At the top, she wrote, Chapter 2. Not because Chapter 1 was over, but because she wasn't building to prove anything anymore. She was building because she could, because she loved it. Because women like her were no longer waiting to be handed something. They were creating it from scratch. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text. It was from Carmen. Client wants to double their shipping capacity. Said, we trust your system more than our own. You did that. Selena typed back a simple reply. Let's scale. She stood, stretching, and walked to the window. The skyline glowed orange and blue, the sun dipping behind the buildings she once felt too small to stand in. Not anymore. She pulled her blazer off the coat rack, slipped it on, and looked at her reflection in the glass, no longer searching for approval. She saw herself fully now, not just as a leader, as a builder, a creator, a force. There would be more battles ahead, more doubters, more rooms where she would have to explain herself twice before being heard once. But the difference now was she didn't need to be invited. She owned the room. As she walked to the elevator, she passed by a group of interns chatting near the exit. One of them, Lena, bright-eyed, 23, stopped her. Selena, she said softly, do you have a second? Sure, Selena replied. Lena hesitated, then said, I just wanted to say, watching you run this company makes me believe I can do it too one day. Not just be part of something, but lead it. Selena smiled. A full, open smile. The kind that carried years of battles and a quiet, overwhelming pride. Good, she said, because that's the goal. She stepped into the elevator, the door sliding closed. And for the first time in her life, she didn't look back. Not at the company she left, not at the family that doubted her, not at the silence that once made her question her worth. She looked forward, into the future, into everything she had created, and everything she was still about to become, because the best kind of revenge wasn't loud. It was leadership, and she had just begun.